Coming up today, responding to Pyongyang's latest successful test firing, South Korea admits North Korea will have an operational submarine-launched ballistic missile program within 3 years. Prosecutors launch a series of raids as they intensify their probe into a corruption and information leak scandal involving a presidential aide and the special inspector who investigated him. First, the government will maintain the existing price ceiling for a contentious anti-graft law set to take effect next month. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, August 30th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye has called for heightened combat readiness against the new and dangerous threats emerging from North Korea. Meeting with her senior aides on Monday, the president also laid out her goals for her upcoming trips to Russia, China and Laos. Our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park began her message by stressing the severity of North Korean threats, which have now become an imminent danger to the south. Regarding the North ballistic missile launch last week, which was an apparent protest against Seoul and Washington's joint military drill, President Park warned that the survival of the nation and the people will be at risk if Pyongyang managed to load a nuclear warhead on its ballistic missiles.
이제 북한의 핵과 미사일은 단순한 불안 요인이 아니라 우리 안보에 매우 심각한 현재의 위협이 되고 있습니다. 북한이 어떤 형태로 도발을 하든 그 시도 자체가 북한 정권의 자멸로 이어질 수 있도록 확고한 응징 태세를 유지해 주기 바랍니다.
The president's message will be reiterated to world leaders at the upcoming Eastern Economic Forum, G20 and ASEAN summits, where she'll call for stronger, coordinated international efforts to counter the unpredictable regime and see greater room for regional economic growth.
러시아 라오스 방문과 아세안 관련 정상회의에서는 극동지역 경제개발 협력 방안을 논의하고 북핵 불용과 이를 위한 안보리 결의 이행 등 국제사회의 대북 압박 동력을 강화하는 데 초점을 맞출 것입니다.
President Park also vowed to take a leading role in open trade against recent protectionism while calling for domestic unity against North Korean threats. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea has acknowledged the gravity of the threat posed by North Korea's arsenal of submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Pyongyang has made significant progress on its SLBMs, as evidenced in last week's successful test launch. Experts say the regime could have reliable, combat-ready SLBMs ready by 2018. Park Ji-won with the details.
According to South Korea's Defense Ministry during a parliamentary hearing on Monday, Pyongyang's submarine-launched ballistic missile technology has been significantly improved. The Defense Ministry said that the North's SLBM system could be used in actual warfare in less than 3 years and would pose a direct threat to the nation and even to U.S. territories. National Defense Minister Han Min-gu stressed Seoul must and will strengthen countermeasures, but did not specifically comment on some lawmakers' strong demands of procuring nuclear-powered submarines to counter the North Korean threat.
Regarding nuclear-powered submarines, it is not appropriate to comment on the matter at this place and at this moment, but the ministry will bear the suggestion in mind.
The deployment of the U.S.-made THAAD battery was another main issue at the hearing. Although lawmakers from both sides of the aisle did not see eye to eye on the matter, most of them commonly criticized the Defense Ministry's change of instance regarding the missile defense system's location. The Defense Ministry had announced last month that the Seongsan Air Force Artillery Unit in Seongju County was the best place to station the THAAD battery, adding that no other place was more suitable. But the ministry changed its position early this month after the president suggested that an alternate site could be considered for the battery.
We believed Songju County was the best location to exert THAAD's strategic capability and evaluated the country's Air Force base at Songsan as the most optimal place. However, due to the county residents' deep concerns and anxieties, we are currently examining 3 other options, as well as reviewing the original choice.
The defense chief confirmed that a Seoul-Washington Joint Working Group is currently evaluating all the candidates within Songju County to deploy THAAD. Han also said the ministry will immediately accelerate administrative steps as soon as a definite location is chosen, but did not specify on when the government is expected to make the decision. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, a US-based North Korea expert has suggested North Korea's KN-11 submarine-launched ballistic missile could also be deployed as a land-based missile. Jeffrey Lewis, director of the East Asia Non-Proliferation Program for the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, says it could be possible, considering the regime has deployed its SSN-6 SLBM as a land-based Musudan missile before. Considering the potential for a North Korean SLBM strike, Lewis also says South Korea should consider deploying 2 THAAD anti-missile batteries to its soil, not just 1. He concluded by proposing that finding ways to prevent North Korea from developing more threats would be the best solution. Now back here in South Korea, and prosecutors have started raiding offices and firms implicated in a corruption scandal involving one of President Park Geun-hye's senior secretaries and a special inspector who had been investigating the aid. Our Oh Jung-hee has the details.
Lee Seok-soo, who is currently under investigation along with a top presidential aide, expressed his intention to resign on Monday. The news came after state prosecutors raided 8 places on the same day as part of an ongoing probe into a corruption scandal involving Woo Byung-woo, senior presidential secretary for civil affairs, and Lee, who is suspected of leaking classified information of his investigation as a special inspector on Woo. Lee said he decided to leave his post as carrying out with his duties normally would be impossible after Monday's confiscation.
I don't think it's right to keep working as a special inspector following today's confiscation. Prosecutors are soon to summon and question me, so I will do my part as a citizen and cooperate with them.
Earlier in the day, a special investigation team confiscated hard disks and various documents from Lee's office, as well as a real estate company run by the family of Woo's wife. The raid also included a Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency office. This is the first time in Korea's prosecution history that 2 high-profile figures are probed simultaneously. Despite calls for his resignation, Woo still remains in his position at the top office. The senior civil affairs secretary is suspected of exerting influence in helping his son get special treatment while carrying out his mandatory military service, while his wife's family members are accused of shady deals with an online game maker. Special Inspector Lee, who was looking into the allegations against Woo, also came under fire after he was reported to have leaked information related to his ongoing case to an unspecified journalist, which represents a breach of the law if proven to be true. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Now, lawmakers opened a hearing Monday to find out who's responsible in the toxic humidifier disinfectant incident that killed and seriously injured hundreds of people here in Korea. The first day of the 2-day hearing didn't exactly go to plan, though, as more than a dozen witnesses didn't even bother showing up. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
On the first day of the hearings on Monday, National Assembly lawmakers grilled witnesses related to the toxic disinfectants production and distribution. Their questions were focused on whether British consumer goods company Reckitt Benckiser were aware of experiments indicating the disinfectant's hazardous elements when it acquired the Oxy unit in 2001. Lawmaker Lee Man-hee from the ruling Sunri Party argued that the group should be held responsible for discontinuing experiments originally conducted by Oxy before the buyout, despite the former Oxy CEO having asked that they be passed on to the British company. Another lawmaker, Hong Ik-pyo from the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, expressed regrets that out of the 28 witnesses summoned for the case, 13 of them, including former Oxy CEO Gaurav Jain, did not attend the hearing. Lawmakers, including the Saenuri Party's Ha Tae-kyung, criticized the lack of cooperation from the British authorities, who have said the case is not a matter for government involvement. The head of Oxy Reckitt Bankiser, Atao Lassi Safdal, who did participate in the hearing, apologized to the people hurt by its products and their families. But he added the company was following local guidelines and regulations at the time, noting the PHMG, or polyhexamethylenguanidine, was not then categorized as a hazardous substance. Safdal acknowledged that later research showed Oxy's products may have caused direct harm to the human body, and added that he was not aware of the product's child safe mark, which was placed without prior testing. The next National Assembly hearing on the case is to include testimony from senior officials from the country's top distributors, including E-Mart, Lotte Mart, and Home Plus. The humidifier disinfectant case came to light after 4 pregnant women died of unknown lung problems in 2011, which led to an investigation that confirmed a connection between more than 100 deaths from lung problems and the chemicals used to clean household humidifiers. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The government has made it clear that the price ceilings for a law designed to root out bribery and corruption in Korea will be maintained at the levels previously set. Korea's ambitious yet controversial anti-graft law is set to take effect in late September. Kwon So-ah reports.
30,000, 50,000 and 100,000 Korean won are the amount of money some Koreans will have to keep in their minds. In a month from now, civil servants, journalists, and private school educators won't be allowed to accept meals that cost more than $27, gifts worth more than $44, or receive money for a wedding or funeral that exceeds $89, according to the country's anti-corruption and bribery prohibition law, or the so-called Kim Yong-nan law, named after the person who proposed the act. This as the government and related ministries decided to maintain the previously set standard at a vice-ministerial level meeting Monday, the second held on the issue. There were calls for a review of the price caps due to concerns it could harm farmers, fishermen, or small and mid-sized companies if spending in specific industries goes downhill. However, officials say changes could not be accepted when considering the law's aim, the general public's perception, and the overall goal to deter corruption in society. The Kim Yong-nan Act was passed by Parliament last year and approved by the Constitutional Court a month ago. The government also discussed Monday who will be subject to the law, as specific job titles have not been named yet, leaving some room for ambiguity. A finalization of the act is planned to be announced on September 6th before the official implementation takes place on September 28th. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
A new OECD report is adding to Korea's concerns over youth unemployment. It shows Korea was one of a handful of countries that saw its youth jobless rate rise last year compared to the year before. Our economics correspondent Hwang Ji-ae has more.
Among 34 OECD member states, only 5 countries saw their unemployment rate of the younger generation rise in 2015 from the previous year. The rest of the 29 nations saw their youth jobless rate remain the same or drop. Korea was among the 5, which included Turkey, the Netherlands, and Finland. According to the OECD data on Monday, Korea's jobless rate among those aged between 15 and 29 stood at 9.2% last year, up 0.2 percentage point from a year earlier. The figure marks the highest since related data was first compiled in 1999 based on a revised standard. With that, Korea's youth unemployment rate is on the rise for 3 straight years now, while that of the OECD average has been declining since 2014. Experts say job conditions have improved in European nations that saw unemployment rates soar after the 2008 global financial crisis, in contrast to Korea, which was relatively unscathed from the crisis but suffering from a global low-growth trend recently. However, Korea's figure was below the OECD average, which came in at 11.6% last year. The youth unemployment rate of European countries was still high, with those of Greece, Spain, and Italy coming in at around 41%, 37%, and 30%, respectively. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, Japan is battening down the hatches as a powerful storm is on collision course with the nation, packing winds of up to 135 kilometers an hour and heavy rain. Typhoon Lionrock is expected to make landfall in the central and northern part of Japan, including the Honshu region by Tuesday evening local time. You can see it on the map there, as the typhoon will dump 80 millimeters of rain per hour on some areas. Outdoor events have been cancelled and hundreds of schools closed in Miyagi and Iwate prefectures. Korea's central and eastern regions will feel the indirect effect of this powerful typhoon, with rain and strong winds forecast through Wednesday. Well, that's all we have for now on this Tuesday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back throughout the day with more news bulletins. Our next one coming up at 10 a.m. Korea time. But stay tuned to Arirang TV. Until next time, goodbye.